Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. I am gratified knowing that these days people are fine saying that, hey, I'll catch up with you later. I'm going to talk to my therapist. It's almost like a badge of courage to say that you have a therapist, you're going through therapy, whereby, I don't know, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, if you said that, people might look at you a little funny. Well, somebody's got a little problem, and then nobody says anything. Now it's the norm, even if you don't have a therapist, and it's like, oh, you don't have one, you should get one. Part of that is music therapy. It is therapeutic. When you think about it, when you listen to music, what's going on there? You're listening to feel a certain way, be it happy. You might want to feel sad. Maybe you want a connection, whatever it might be. It is therapy lying in there. And we're going to talk to somebody that helps people all the time, all different ages, and dig into the developmental aspect of music therapy. She's the woman behind Black Mountain Music Therapy, located in Pennsylvania. Antoinette Morrison joins us again on the program. How you doing today?
Great, Steve. I'm just going to correct you one second, and it happens all the time. It's back, not black.
Did I
That's
say that? And I'm staring right
okay.
at it. And you know what's funny? I'm thinking like back mountain. I think like backwoods, and I think it's so cool. Like I dream of being places, in the woods, out of the city. So, sorry for
It's
that.
not it's not in the woods. It's the nickname for this area. So that's the title. But many people, I think they see black right away. Just
Yeah,
yeah.
interesting. And I didn't. I know it's not in the woods, but that's the visual you get, and that's how I remember it. But it didn't work that time because I said black. Maybe there's a mountain nearby called Black Mountain. I don't know.
Possibly. I'm unaware, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be there.
So you're around Dallas, Pennsylvania. Where about is that?
It's very close to Wilkes-Barre, about 20 minutes from Wilkes-Barre,
Okay.
40 minutes from Scranton,
Yeah,
approximately.
totally got it. I have a friend who known him for decades and decades, and he worked in radio in that area. And he's on an oldie station now, and I bet you it's in the same area. I think he went back to where he originated from.
Okay, okay, possibly.
Funny we're talking about music, and there you go. Um, let's start from the beginning before we get into the developmental aspect of
Okay.
what you do. Music therapy. I think people, it might surprise them to hear those two words put together. Can you just define what goes on there when you work with somebody on that level?
Sure. There's a organizational definition of it, but I think in music therapy, we're using music as our way of meeting and communicating with someone. And so
Hmm.
sometimes some things, I mean, we also use language, but we meet them, like possibly where they're at. Maybe they don't need, or they need really soft music, really soft sounds. Maybe they need just the opposite, but we kind of meet them beyond the words, I think, where they're at first.
Hmm. Would you say that in this situation that music is the connector?
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
I think, Steve, if you were to look up how much of communication, I think I've looked it up a couple times, is actually done with language. I think it says 93% of it is not language. So, yeah, we use language too, but there's a lot of communication that happens before the language even takes place. The way a person looks at you, the speed of their movements, their posture.
Hmm.
So a lot of that can be relayed in the music also.
And what you're referring to, would that also be just therapy in general, where there's more going on there than just the conversation?
Yes, I would think so. Yes.
Hmm. Um, I'm a big believer in energy, and the more and more I look into it and I study it, um, you believe it's also part of the energy between two people, say the therapist and somebody that they're working with, that exchange of energy, when it's good and it's right, helps move their healing along.
Absolutely. I think possibly people might define energy slightly differently depending on where your perspective is, but
Mhm.
a lot of times, like in when we're working with maybe a child that is real low energy, we might have to mirror back that energy through through the pace of the music, through possibly the dynamics of the music, and possibly raise that up. So yeah, I do think that, there's an energy, there's definitely, different aspects of relating that happen. Yes.
Hmm. Interesting when you look at it. Energy is what? Vibration. What is music? Vibration.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
I don't know that we always are aware of that part of
Sure.
it.
Sure.
But I mean, even our thoughts have, even our thoughts have energy, and that comes across in many different ways.
Yeah. It's and music is energy. When you think about it, there has to be a vibration, and when you hit a piano key, you strum a string, it's vibrating, and that's producing a sound, and that in turn is producing a result when somebody hears it. Um,
Absolutely. Even your voice. I mean, if you got loud enough and put your hand in front of your face,
yeah.
you absolutely feel, the vibration from your voice.
And yeah, what's going on there? Your vocal cords are vibrating. That's what's sending the sound out.
Right, right.
So on a therapy level, what are some of the things that you help people overcome? And is it truly all ages that you work with, or mostly younger?
We started out with mostly younger, but we do have all ages. Um, we help a lot of the younger kids with things like attention, self-regulation, communication. A lot of the various teens that we see has a lot to do with anxiety, um, let's see, OCD, controlling like behaviors, um, being able to regulate our emotions, um, being able to navigate a situation that might be overwhelming. And with adults, there's many, many different aspects. It depends on why they're coming to us. Are they coming to us because they've had a stroke and are having
Mm.
difficulties with communication or motor, um, motor planning possibly, or are they coming to us because life just isn't working right now for them? So it depends on who's coming.
Wow. Um, how does it work? I'm going basic here, but and I want to get deeper into the developmental aspect in a second. But when you're working with somebody using music, what's going on there? What is getting it done whereby other types of therapy might not be as effective for somebody?
Um, okay, so possibly uh, going using the language may be overwhelming to somebody. Well, somebody that seems very intelligent and does really well on academics may not also be picking up all the avenues of like sarcasm or um, I can't think of the word, but um, I'm sorry, I just lost my track of
No
thinking. What
worries.
was it?
No worries. Yeah, they okay, so they're not picking up on all the different nuances within the
Right.
language.
Right. Or it may be a little bit more difficult, or maybe they first just need to, relax before they come in. Years ago, I had a girl that absolutely did not want to come upstairs. Her parents came and got me. We were in a second floor building at that time, and I came down to her. I said, "Listen, we don't need to talk at all. If you don't want to, why don't you just come up and we'll jam or listen to music, whatever you want to do." And that's the way we started, because that was not threatening to her.
Hmm. Yeah, isn't it interesting how music connects people?
Yes, yes.
It's magical to me. It truly is. And I now in the last number of years seek out any live music. I will go to see anything, anywhere. I don't care what kind of music it is. Now, that's a challenge for me because if I want to go with somebody else, they're going to say, "Man, I don't want to see that. I don't want to hear that." And I'm open to anything. And I even have a friend, long story short, um, I knew him when we were kids
Okay.
and we recently reconnected. Just saw him on the street. Oh my God, how you been? Blah, blah, blah. Our thing now is going to see live music, whether it's a tribute band, whether it's a concert, what doesn't matter what it could be, a DJ if it's worth it. And that's our connection. And we're just into it. Like, hey, do you know that guy? He's from another band. It's our connector. And yeah, I look forward to hanging out with him because we're on the same page there when it comes to music. And it's funny how it all connects people. I could just walk in a room
Isn't,
and be around others, strangers, and we're all doing the same thing.
isn't it amazing at a concert
Right.
how many people are on the same page at the same time for
Yeah.
that same length of time?
Yeah. It is truly magical. There's like love in the air. I can't even describe it, but we talk about energy, talk about the collective energy in a room or a concert venue, whatever it is that's going on there. And it all starts with somebody banging a piano or
And
singing a note.
what keeps those people on the same page is that music is very predictable, right? You kind of know the
Hmm.
beginning and the end of each phrase, sentence. When there's a buildup, everybody hears that buildup. Everybody's energy is going up, or vice versa. But that predictability in music provides a lot of safety and connection.
I never thought of it in that regard. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Because when you think about it, more times than not, it is people going to see acts, bands, music, whatever. You know the songs. You
Right.
know what's coming next.
And even every artist kind of has their thing that they do. So if you have a favorite artist and their song comes on the radio before it's announced, you almost already know, oh, your attention is alerted because everybody has their little patterns that they kind of, that resurface all the time, just like we do in regular life.
Wow. I never thought of that. And now I would take it to another level. If somebody goes to a music show, you don't know the artist, you don't know any of the songs. Is the result similar?
Well, I guess it would depend on, what your tastes are.
Hmm.
Um, I, I don't want to offend anybody, but there's a particular style of music. And I'm not a huge jazz fan,
Okay.
and I can get lost uh, in the jazz.
I
So
get you.
it would have to have something in it that really draws me to keep my attention.
Hmm.
That's my preference. Nothing wrong with jazz. Don't want to
No,
say
not at all. Not at all. And to your point, even if you don't know the artist, the music, whatever, guess what is still happening there? The syncopation. Somebody starts playing. There's
right,
still it's still a rhythm, and you know what's coming next.
right,
If we're in a rhythm and somebody's playing the drums, you kind of know the next beat. Because we're in a measure of music. I know nothing about music. I can't read notes, none of that. But I think it goes back to what you said, the predictability. We kind of know what's coming next. And maybe there'll be a fill and they'll change it up, but then they're back to it again. So it's not like just noise, like
right.
cars going by. There's something
Literally,
predictable.
last year I was at the beach, and a guy next to me had earphones on, and I was reading a book. I wasn't even aware of it, but I looked down at my foot. My foot is kicking to the beat. I wasn't paying attention to him, but something in me was picking up that music going on. I was reading my book, but noticed, my foot's still moving to the beat of his music behind me.
Amazing. I think we have a call. Hi, can you hear us?
Excuse, this is Chris.
Checking in from Searsport, Maine today. So we're talking music. We're talking music therapy.
Yeah.
Okay, were you able to hear him?
No, I wasn't able to hear him.
Okay.
Did you hear?
I can hear you fine. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, it was like, what musical activities would you think would be most effective for improving someone with ADHD? For my little brother.
Well, I think when you have ADHD, it depends on how old you are, kind of, and where you are in the process. So, small kids with ADHD often have difficulty, of course, paying attention, and a lot of times their auditory processing is not equal to their visual processing. So,
Oh,
just putting on random music might not help. So, I
ah,
know.
yeah, yeah. That's why I was thinking like any kind of specifics, like a rock or a classical
Hmm.
or you know.
But I think paying attention to, how fast he's moving, what he seems to be attracted to, you might find, where his preferences are. And then or possibly I don't know how old he is, but, if he's in the room and you have the music on, are you seeing a little bit of movement to that music? So
Yeah,
possibly
yeah,
he's
yeah.
picking it up. Yeah, like I did, not maybe not quite paying attention, but you can kind of start from there with that,
Oh,
okay, that rhythm, or what is it? What is it about that music
Hmm.
that's pulling his attention at some level?
okay, okay.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's more of observation. You need to observe um, somebody, what's moving them, literally and figuratively, and then kind of start from there. Does that sound reasonable, Antoinette?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, it does. 'Cause sometimes I'll put something else on and he'll like just like be turned off to it versus like other kinds of like more upbeat, like faster music. Like he'll like pop along and clap his hands. Okay, sounds
Yeah,
good. I'll definitely keep that in mind. Thank you.
I appreciate it,
sure.
Craig. Thanks for calling.
All right. So
Interesting. Wow, we learn a lot here. We get together.
We, years ago, I was working with a little boy on the spectrum, and his dad told me he liked hard rock headbanger music. I would play it, and that it just didn't pull his attention. We found out what he liked about it was when his dad turned it up in the car, he could feel the vibration of it against his
Wow.
back. And that's what he liked. Not so much that type of music, but it gave him that sensory stuff that he was seeking.
Hmm. So we could have put on dance or hip hop. It's kind of beat and bass heavy, and probably achieve the same thing, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
We started talking before about the developmental aspect of music therapy. Can we look at that right now?
Sure, sure. So I'm gonna use the last gentleman's call as an example. So I think the big difference between developmental work and behavioral work, if I'm going to put it in my own words, um, is that behavioral work tends to look at behaviors and how to adjust them to possibly being more typical, more functional. In developmental work, we look at what the client is doing and ask the question, what purpose is that serving? So we don't want to, a lot of times, I had an example from an OT that said the kid was W sitting, which means sitting on their knees. Okay, OTs really don't like that. And she asked the question in my developmental class, so what do you do? Well, the purpose that W sitting was serving was keeping his balance. So you don't want to, just sit them the correct way because they feel unbalanced. They're absolutely going to go back.
Mhm.
But you got to start to work with that then, and make the play, the interaction more interesting so that they start to get up on their own. So in for example, the gentleman that just called, what I gave him was the start. So a lot of times with ADHD, the ability to hold a nice long sequence in your head, a sequence of thought, is difficult. And so when the impulse pulls up, it's a bigger reward than following through a lot of times. And so we have to work with that developmentally. We have to get their intention first, then we have to get some engagement, and then we have to get two-way um, communication, whether it's through just the moving to the music, but there's got to be circles of communication. So I might do something, I kind of look at circles of communication like children pretending. So the first child does something, the second child responds to it and builds off of it. Then the first child responds to that child and builds off it. So the play, is going somewhere. So I guess I can give a little bit of an example. If a child is coming in and isn't speaking, and we're just working towards the words, we have to look at, why are they not speaking? What is not in place for them not to speak? Maybe there's some motor planning issues. So yeah, you can get them to say the correct words, maybe. But if we aren't taking care of those motor planning issues, which are very basic at the level of development, then we're gonna run into a wall at some point. Many of the teenagers that we get here, we get for one of three reasons: behavioral issues, OCD-like behaviors, or anxiety.
Mm.
So if we haven't built up that range of expression, it's like we have a tunnel to respond in. And when we have that tunnel to respond in, remember I talked about the predictability? Well, that OCD-like behavior helps regulate that individual, because if I do the same thing over and over, I know what's going to happen next. So that way I can stay calm and regulated and attentive. So we have to be working with not overwhelming the individual, but stretching that tunnel that they're in.
Wow. It almost sounds like you have to meet them on their terms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
I
Right
think,
down to sitting on your knees. If you're
yes,
comfortable doing that, you can't start. That's your foundation. A
right.
child or adult, anybody. Yeah, even us, right? Like if I said to you, right now, Antoinette, sit a certain way before we do this podcast, you know, what? Wow, that's not comfortable. That's not me.
Right.
But as a starting point, if you meet them, on their terms and kind of, like you said, the tunnels there, you widen it over, you widen it in terms of
Right.
what they're comfortable with and accepting. Um, Fascinating talking about this. The more and more I see there's such a place for music therapy in our world, and more need to know. And you know what? Call it art therapy, the arts,
Sure.
because it could, if somebody loves to draw and paint and they're allowed to express themselves, that's just another way to get the job done.
Right. And language is up there on that developmental scale. It's abstract.
Mm,
So if you can't get to the expression part through the language,
sure.
you can get to it through other levels and work your way there.
And we're going to put a period at the end of that sentence because that says it all, literally right there. What's the best way to find you and the center?
Well, we're right in Dallas, and I think most people are finding us through the website, our website, or Linktree, which of course connects us to all the social media websites.
Sure.
But probably our website is the fastest way. There's a contact form on there and a phone number.
Yep, and that's backmountainmusictherapy.com. And Dallas, just want to clarify, Pennsylvania. There's a Dallas in Pennsylvania.
Correct. Correct.
Wonderful talking with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Steve. Nice talking with you too.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.